Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Excellent. Alright, we'll just try to gather the crowd.
Okay.
And I'll do the introduction in English so you can correct me in an instant.
Okay.
Alright, I have the great pleasure to introduce Ville to you, a good friend and former co-worker of mine. We've worked together at the G-Lab on a project to help people with diabetes type 2 and COPD to get more active in their everyday life, based as a gamified app on a smartphone. And this is also somewhat a specialty of Ville to put educational context into a gameful box, so to speak. And what he's going to talk about today is a free, as in open source, toolbox to create adventure type scenarios. Which one of you guys knows Monkey Island? Well, that's some. To educate children, I guess. You have one adventure game that revolves around people with disabilities.
Yes.
But I guess you have that in the presentation?
Yes.
So with that, I hand over to you.
Thank you. Hello everyone. Let me check if I can share my...
Put it on your nose.
Okay.
Alright.
So, hello, my name is Ville and greetings from Finland, where it was around -30 a few days ago. And now it's only -9, but there is like neck deep in snow. So this is a company, or I'm going to have a short introduction of what we actually do. And this is me, a short bio. I have been in the media industry for 10 or so years, and for the past 7 I have been in the Minifish Ltd as a CEO and a game designer. And what our company does mainly is games for education and health sectors with emphasis on narratives and storytelling. So we don't do that much games that are like very mechanic based, except the one with Big Peter was a bit more, but mainly via narratives. And we do quite a lot of this in Finland. So yeah. And my topic today is basically first the challenge in educational gaming. What are the problems that we are facing on a project-based work when we develop some game for a client? It has implications. So this is the first point that I can that's apparent to me, or what I have sort of gathered in the recent years. The trend in gaming is back towards the content and the good narrative in general. Mainly the free-to-play scene has made it so that single developers, there are around 2 million application developers, of which half only are making less than $100 a month per application. So this free-to-play trend is making small indie developers unable to get their product on the market. Another point on educational gaming is that the badges and points and leaderboards method isn't the best way of delivering the learning content to the users. So it would be better to put the actual learning content to the most fun and engaging part of the game instead of just candy crumbling the learning material with gamified components that makes it sort of gamified but not as intrinsically motivating. And third point is that there are troubles in creating value from intangible assets and gaming in education. So the companies that work on an educational sector with games have a problem in creating products that will generate enough revenue for them, mainly because of these 4 points here. I don't know quite exactly what's the situation in Germany, but in Finland we have the thing called Public Procurement Act, which says, it's an European Union-wide law on purchases. So if a public organization wants to buy something, they have to make a public vote for bidding, and that often makes it so that the offering or making the proposal for a game development project in a public domain is skewed somewhat. So, for example, the public company or the public organization has 40,000 euros in a budget to make a game. So they put out this call for proposals, and only few game companies, even though we have over 250 game companies in Finland, will ever send them a proposal because of mainly the vendors requiring IPR while the public organizations are avoiding the vendor locking. Also, the insufficient resources of the public sector organizations, and when it comes to the educational and serious games, the prohibition of selling decreased in Finland. But all in all, the development cycle of a serious game of any significant length, complexity, or volume has proven to be prohibitively expensive at the moment. So this has all has to do with the subject-specific the learning games or the educational games, if they are not made as a gamified add-on to an existing game, existing learning environment or something, they are topic and subject-based and will require quite a lot of resources, while the user base isn't that large. So, for example, Amplify is an American educational game company that had 1,200 people working for them, a part of News Corp. Just in, I think, late September, they had to lay off over 500 people, and their whole company is going to be diluted, or the News Corp sold the company, and their they made probably the most awesome looking educational games. They were just magnificent, and they had all sorts of curricula design components in them and everything. But the problem in White was that the target group was never big enough for the game, the specific topic of the specific game to be profitable. So what now? The thing that we have been spending time on, like for the past 7 years working in this environment where these problems exist, is we created a thing called Errant. It's an adventure game logic and content management system. So basically, this is what it looked like before. Now we are in a process of renewing this to something a bit more clean, like this. But what this does is it manages the content and logic of a point-and-click adventure game. And we have used this tool now for a bit over 6 months. The first larger game we have managed to create with this is called Vortrag, the game about safety and friendship. It is made for ASPA Foundation, a public organization here in Finland, which arranges housing services for disabled and handicapped people. So they wanted to have a game about living safe. And this is what we came up with. It has a character modification screen or system. And the game is basically 2-hour-long point-and-click adventure about the main character and this brown-haired dude with the case of beer on the left called Esko Tikkanen. Esko arrives to the player's housewarming party, and they get the idea of going to a rock festival together. And the game is about the player and Tikkanen trying to gather all the necessary equipment and also win a competition that will grant them the tickets to the rock festival. And in their journey, they will face all sorts of troubles. Like, for example, if you don't remember to advise Tikkanen to take his epilepsy medicine, and you go to a bar with him, he will collapse in a seizure, and you have to know how to get some help to him. And it has things like the quest log and inventory, where you store all the equipment that you have gathered, missions, and yep, that's about the summary of the game. It's a bit over 2 hours, 28 quests, 38 locations, and 22 NPCs, and a soundtrack, and 120 minutes of voiceovers. And it was generated from the Errant system with basically no programming at all. At the moment, the drawings, the graphics are generated or are drawn in Illustrator, and we have integrated the Illustrator to the system so that you can use scripts to export the graphics directly to the Errant. But in the future, we are going to have also an asset store that you can store your graphics or get free or paid graphics from the inside the system. So basically, Errant is a successor to SCUM, which stands for Script Creation Utility for Manic Mansion, that was which was developed at Lucasfilms Games to ease the development of the graphic adventure game called Manic Mansion. The idea behind that was that the developers of the game just said to the designers that we don't have enough time in a million years to do everything you want. So we make you a tool that you can do that by yourself. So in our case, the same thing happened. I wanted everything, and our programmer said that we possibly couldn't have everything, and so this was what they came up with for me. And it's a cloud-based web service that elevates the game development productivity to an unseen level, I would say. It's also, well, I will get to this a bit later, but it also facilitates the value creation from intangible assets and the evolution of new learning processes. And in short, basically, you describe the game content with the system, and it generates the game from it. And it's the system is not basically a game engine. Like often, for example, Unity has some tools in it for adventure game creation. But this platform or Errant is creating a logic that can be read by any game engine if necessary APIs are written in between. So at the moment it works on Phaser and on mobile and a browser, but the rest of these and some others are coming. And it is basically used to create all the necessary components of an point-and-click adventure game, including the game stage, scenes, assets, actions, animations, etc. And the target groups that we have planned for this are the game developers, primarily. Basically, Errant can be used in a serious game production. It doesn't, even though it doesn't need any programming knowledge or so, it can be integrated into a bigger game project that has departments and content producers and graphic artists and so on. But another main target group are basically everyone else. For example, artists, storytellers, hobbyists, and experimenters. It doesn't take quite that much time to get into, and you can just start producing content right away. We have had a couple interns working with us here in Ilkkala who have sort of just picked the tool up and started to do stuff. And teachers and students is the last target group that, or the third one, that makes basically it possible for teachers to create gameful learning materials, but also let the students to create content themselves for art or literature or ITC. ICT learning as a learning of these topics, and it's an open source as well. So we think that at least in Finland this is often the main or this is something that is in order for us to enable the people who really benefit from the platform the most, has this open will benefit from the open source approach the most. And at the moment there are 4 games done or in development with the platform. The first one was I still have the wrong date on the first one. It was late 2014. Basically, we made a small game about healthy lifestyle choices for Laura University of Applied Sciences, and that was sort of the Kickstarter for the development of the platform. Then the second one about the living safety was the main driver. That basically, with that project, we ended up with the functional prototype that we are now redesigning or refactoring, so to speak. And there are 2 other projects at the moment, one for the Finnish Brain Research and Rehabilitation Center, where we work on an occupational therapy game, and also a game for ehkäisevä päihdetyö, EHY, which is a game to support preventive substance abuse work. And one of the main things that we see this enables is the collaborative game design and development as an activity itself. So we have since late last year worked on a project. I think this is the coolest context I have ever had the possibility to put the European flag into. So in 2 cities in Finland, one called Loppi and one called Hanko, we have an European Union funded project with the Laura University of Applied Sciences, where we have 2 teams of young and unemployed people in a risk of social exclusion, developing a game completely from from their minds. So we are facilitating the project, but they came up with the concept and the graphics and all that. So now we are working on a game called Reptilian Overlords. It's going to be a part strategy, part adventure game about you being a reptilian overlord, managing a mega corporation and doing all sorts of things to sabotage other mega corporations and so on. And the content in this project is made by the people in the teams that have no previous game experience, basically whatsoever. And the third or the fourth thing is the Finnish educational system at the moment, or the Finnish educational system has a lot of international is notified internationally quite a lot, and because of this, the Finland has the incentive to invest in educational export efforts. So there's a lot of work done in Finland promoting or making educational export projects with Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, and so on. But one thing that Finland still lacks is a scalable product. So basically, they are selling time and, of course, know-how, but it's not scalable. So what we have planned on top of Errant is this content management system for gamified learning materials called Finnish system. And in cooperation with the Finnish Educational Institute, we are creating narrative pedagogy type of learning content in this gamified environment, and creating a sort of a repository where there are like ever-growing collection of these. And these can be then localized by channel partners in other countries to put the language, culture, and content dependent in some place. A good example that we just stumbled upon a few days ago was India. So in Finland we have a lot of knowledge about the healthcare sector, and one Finnish University of Applied Sciences was exporting nursing education to India, and suddenly they just faced the fact that there is simply not allowed by law a man or a person under 30, over 36 to study nursing. So that's suddenly a point that possibly our learning material doesn't anymore fit into the new culture or language or culture setting. So that's what the channel partners are for. So they are localizing the content. And last thing, we are launching the beta of the Errant at the Global Game Jam event here in Finland on 29th. How much do I have, or am I over time already? Because
But in any case.
Yeah.
Did it?
Yes, questions?
Okay. Well, the first question obviously is, can we try a game online that is already out there? The second question is, can we try it out in English?
Unfortunately not yet in English, but we are working on, well, hopefully, I would say hopefully, early next month there will be games in English made by this, because there are going to be around 20 game jam sites and over 700 game jam participants that will have this platform at their disposal. But the localization of this game hasn't or was in our plans, but since we decided to launch it on the end of this month, the sort of prioritizing overreached this, and now there are still no English title or subtitles in this game, unfortunately.
Right, then the next question is actually addressed to the crowd. Do we have someone here from an educational background?
Peter, you promised.
Yeah, there's one.
Yes.
So
I'm afraid.
it'll be all right in the end. So, would this be something you would use? I mean, keeping in mind that it's accessible, no programming skill, and that you could basically model a scenario, which is something that sort of happens in education. I mean, even children do it from a very early level on by playing, for example, mommy and daddy, and you can sort of perpetuate that even into what was the neuro rehabilitation thing you showed, Ville?
Yeah, that's the idea of what our system is doing in that game is that we have when a person suffers from a seizure, or how you call it from brain trauma, they often have the problems in two areas, or basically in the order of things, like when and in which order you do basic things like brush your teeth. So our game for the rehabilitation has two components. One is for the bigger structure that has sort of daily routines. You wake up, you go to the kitchen and make breakfast, and then you go to grocery store, and then to your workplace, and so on. And on top of that, there is this card game that you use to order then the more fine-tuned parts of the task. So, for example, you can in the adventure game you go to your washing machine, and then when you click the washing machine, the card game pops out, and you need to arrange the phases of that task like in a finer grained way, if that made any sense.
I'd say yes. What do you guys say? Otherwise I can offer a short explanation. So you get to the washing machine and you have to order the process of getting your laundry into the washing machine, pouring the washing powder or whatever in, and selecting the correct program, and you have to sort that. So you have symbols with text and you have to arrange them in the right order, because that is one of the things you can no longer do if you had a stroke. All right, questions? While Ville is playing the game.
So essentially, using this engine, this errantry thing that he's talking about, the only thing that you'd have to actually add would be like all this animation and stuff like that, and it would still give you like, kind of like a template. Okay, now add some of this. Is that the general idea?
Did you get it?
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I heard it sort of, but I had the audio thing that you didn't hear, but I did hear it pretty loudly. So
okay, no
can you repeat the question?
Yeah, no problem. So what do you need to add to errantry to actually get a game out the other end?
For now, at the moment, you need to add the graphics. So, but in the end, we are going to provide a set of general generic graphics that you can already use in order to make a story, for example.
Okay.
But at the moment, you need to add graphics for the character and the assets and the backgrounds and so on. And of course your story.
Right. Okay, thanks.
So one question from my side, how hard can I fail in this game? Can I set everything on fire and everyone dies?
Yes. Actually, in several situations, this game has this kind of an comical game over that is instantly set back few minutes or few seconds in game time into a moment when you didn't do your mistake, and then you can choose again. It's with the narratives like this that are quite linear. Basically, well, this game has a sort of an open world. So once you get this housewarming party done, then you have all the guests in and the main character as well. After that, you have basically you can choose in which order you do things before the end. So it's spreads into a million possibilities and then boils down back into the ending where you go to the festival. But there are few places, for example, I don't know what's the name in English for when you deep fry stuff, and if your deep fry set gets on fire and if you put it out with water, it will explode and it will kill everyone, and then there's two tombstones for a while, and then you get back into that moment before you pour water on top of burning oil and you can choose again.
I like making bad choices in games. All right, so one question that probably not everyone does know about, what is a game jam? Because
Game jam is an event where a bunch of, well, the global game jam is a global event where thousands and thousands and thousands of people spend 48 hours developing a game. And it's basically like a music jam, but a bit longer, and the end result is hopefully a game. This tool is that the reason why we are sponsoring the Finnish Game Jam and launching this system at the Game Jam in the end of the month is that because we think it's the most suitable situation for such a quick and easy to get into type of tool. So basically, that the 700 game developers or 2D game developers that are attending only in Finland all will have access to the cloud service and everything. They will have on-site support to help if there's any trouble working on it, and it's basically a test launch. It will be available globally as well from the Friday on 29th.
all right, more questions? Other than that, I would suggest you try to kill everyone and we call it a wrap.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I still seem to live. Ich wollte, dass sie tatsächlich alle umbringen. Schade.
Gut, wir machen ein paar Minuten Pause und dann mache ich weiter mit Aktion Ankommen. Holt euch noch ein Bier, ich erzähle dann auch noch was zum Thema Spenden. Und ja, fühlt euch wohl, wie zu Hause wie immer. Und gleich geht es dann weiter, Viertelstunde sowas.